Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and CEO of Let's Talk Supply Chain, as well as the host of the Blended podcast and founder of the Blended Pledge. And I'm excited to be partnering with the team at Loop. We have so much to talk about today. We're going to be talking about customer experience, but it's going to be with a very different twist. I mean, usually we talk about CX as a marketing or customer care problem. But today we're going to be talking about it as a logistics data problem. And only last week, I was on stage with Nilesh, VP of Supply Chain and Technology at Staples, talking about the role of technology to transform customer experiences at Manifest last week. And so I know it's really top of mind for a lot of executives out there, because a lot of times it means the difference between keeping customers and not keeping customers. And logistics and data have a lot to do with that. And so this is going to be a really interesting conversation, especially today, because everything is really fast moving thanks to the wave of AI and agentic capabilities really being built for and applied to logistics. I mean, to be successful, customer experience needs to work closely with transportation performance. But also with legacy systems, we're seeing silos, fragmentation, disruptions. Brands are still struggling to connect the dots, and we're going to be talking about that today, because Loop is here with some good news. With AI, real-time transportation data, and the right partner, you can unify your systems, create customer experiences that drive results, and leave your competition in 2025. Now, we will be taking your questions throughout the show and closer to the end, so make sure to add your questions into the comments. We also want to know where you are tuning in from, so put that in the comments. And if you like the conversation, make sure to add a fire emoji in the comments, because we love a good fire emoji here at Let's Talk Supply Chain. And Matt, I'm pretty sure over at Loop, you guys like a good fire emoji too. What do you think?
We love it.
Well, welcome to the show, Matt. I'm super excited to have you here because you're going to be talking about how you're working with your customers, what it looks like in the landscape right now, how should we be thinking about all of this? And of course, we can't talk about supply chain logistics without mentioning AI. And so we'll also be talking about that today. Now, before we dive in, can you introduce yourself, give us a little bit about your background and what you do at Loop?
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited for the show. And my name is Matt McKinney. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Loop. I spent the entirety of my career in AI. And what's crazy is that when I started, we just used to call it statistics, and then became machine learning and data science. And then you started to see generative AI really take off, the LLMs in 2019, but ChatGPT brought it to the public forum. And so it's been such an exciting ride to watch just over the last 2 decades, and seeing it transform from the academic community to the industry to now it's embedded in every single thing that we do in business. And we started Loop actually right as LLMs were popping up because of the power of what they could do with data. And this, circa 2019, they were doing cute things like predicting the next word in a sentence. But then we started to see these things are much more powerful than that. They can take messy and unstructured data in a way that we've never been able to organize it before. And if you can imagine, that was 4 or 5 years ago. The world in which we have today with agentic capabilities with AI built on these really strong data foundations, that's what's driving all the value in the enterprise. So I still try to consider myself our chief AI officer, but I lost that title a little bit when we brought in one of the top AI experts from Uber, where I used to work. My co-founder used to work on the AI and engineering team. So it's been such just an exciting time the last couple of years, especially. I wake up in the middle of the night, just excited and terrified at the same time because AI is moving so fast.
Can I tell you, I think for CEOs in general, it's kind of where we live, right? Excitement and being terrified kind of live one and the same in your nervous system if you're an entrepreneur or CEO, and you're you've got things that are coming out that you're launching that have never been done before. I kind of feel the same way right now because we've got an announcement coming out too, but I think it's really interesting to hear you say that too, because I thought I was alone in all that.
Yeah, no, it's truly moving so fast, and we owe it to our customers because our customers, I think of our customers, they're just my boss, and they could fire me very quickly just by taking their business elsewhere. And so we have to be on the cutting edge to deliver superior experiences for our customers, so they can deliver superior experiences for their customers. And I know that's going to be the topic of our conversation today.
Absolutely. I want to give a shout out to Captain Beard because we already got our first fire emoji and we've barely gotten started. So hold on to your seats because it's going to get even better. So I want to ask you the first question around setting the scene. Can you set the scene for us by talking about customer expectations? What do they mean for brands? And these are ever evolving. Right? I mean, we know customer expectations are higher than ever. I, as a consumer, my expectations have grown. I'm sure yours has too. But why, despite all of the investment in technology, do you think that there's still such a massive gap between operational performance and that customer promise that really keeps us top of mind in front of that consumer?
Yeah. But the expectation is that everybody wants an Amazon level experience. They want, the same day or next day delivery. They want it predictable. They want it to be incredibly cost efficient. They don't want to pay for it. And, in fact, 85% of customers, they will not order from a brand if they have a poor delivery experience.
Right.
And so the reality is most brands, they're just trying to deliver this experience on top of really fragmented logistics data. You have shipment data in one system and contracts and invoices in another system. And all of the disconnection between the operations and the finance, it creates this tax, and this tax is then obviously passed along in the consumer experience in terms of poor quality or higher prices. If you don't have this data, you're not going to be able to negotiate better rates. Number one, you're not going to be able to design a smarter network, and you're not going to be able to deliver that promise that you made to your customer reliably and predictably time and time again.
Yeah. And I think communication is really key, like internal communication, external communication, being able to not only share data internally so that we break down some of those silos, create some of that collaboration, but also externally with your partners, right? Whether that be a software partner, whether that be a logistics partner, whether that be a parcel carrier, communication and having that data at your fingertips to have a knowledgeable conversation about what's actually going on and being able to showcase that really makes a difference in how you are working externally with outside vendors.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's the fragmentation here that's driving all of the struggle. And so having the data connected and stitched together across not just your enterprise, not just your operations, but your supplier's operations and your customer, that's where the magic happens. If you can connect all that and you can be anticipatory of what's about to happen instead of reacting to a poor customer experience, them going in, filing a claim or contacting customer care and saying, I didn't get my package delivered. What's going on? These are all challenges that are, quite frankly, root cause because of the data trap, the bad data.
Well, and let's talk about that because I feel like I've been doing this podcast since 2016. I feel like I've been talking about bad data, clean data for a number of years already. I would say even probably it started back in 2018 where everybody was really talking about it. It's part of the conversations that I'm having, but I don't understand why it's still a struggle today. Like, why is getting clean data still such a struggle? And we're in 2026 now. I feel like if we're not getting our data right already, we're in a bit of trouble, right? Because things, like you said, are moving quickly, they're changing quickly. How do we even keep up if we don't have what we need to be able to keep up?
Yeah. I mean, look, at Uber, we had data challenges, and Uber was one of the best data companies in the world, and custom built a lot of the technology because of the scale and size of the data that we had. but even a company like Uber had data challenges. And when you look at the supply chain, the supply chain, it's just a series of transactions stitched together. And every transaction has a organization with a sales order on one side and a purchase order on the other side. And each organization has their own systems, their own processes, their own standards. And so when you transact and move data from one side to the other side, that's where the friction happens. And then take it even further within your organization, right? You've got your data fragmentation across your TMS, your WMS, you pick your 3-letter acronym. It is trapped and siloed. And that creates a lot of complexity with teams operating from different versions of the same data. And I think in particular, logistics data, 60% of this data, it's offline, it's dark, it's trapped in emails and PDFs and spreadsheets saved locally. And it makes it really hard for us to make decisions because we have to stitch together this data. And oftentimes, I was talking to a few, I believe we were at the same event in Manifest, and talking to a few executives. And, when we asked who actually trusts their supply chain data, no one raised their hand. And so that's a huge challenge if you're looking to drive, agentic capabilities and workflow automation on top of really bad data, or, make multi-million-dollar decisions that are going to impact your customer experience and the pricing of your products. I mean, this is big stuff. With bad data, you're not able to make that.
Well, and I've been talking about a couple of surveys on my live shows over the last week or so, and it's a high percentage of organizations that are looking to implement AI in 2026. But if you're at a conference like that last week and none of them raised their hand, that actually means, and I think it was 83% are looking to bring in AI into their supply chain organization. If that's the case, though, nobody's ready.
That's right. Yeah. And by the way, 83% last week, it'll be 100% in the next 2 weeks. I mean, it's changing that fast. And if you don't have an AI strategy for supply chain, then you're going to be caught on your flat feet, and your customers, they're going to be disappointed, and their customers can fire you just by taking their business elsewhere. So you've got to have an AI strategy in the supply chain this year.
Well, and I go back to what you were talking about around different versions. I almost feel like we've taken what we have done in Excel with the different versions, and we're talking about data and the data siloing within the different systems. We've kind of just taken that and moved it into a different kind of technology, but it's still doing the same thing in the fact that we're not necessarily speaking all the same language, and we don't know what version we're on.
And that's a really good point too, because if you think of the next generation of AI that we're working with today, the large language models, operative word being language, they run on language. They need to understand the enterprise language and the domain language of the supply chain to be able to operate. And so if you don't have the language dialed and you don't have the data dialed, normalized across the different entities and organizations, then there's no way that you're ever going to get any ROI from your AI deployments.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. And so I want to bring it back to customer experience, because that's really kind of what we're talking about today. Do you think that the real barrier to that customer experience is actually a data foundation problem? Like, I know we're talking about the fact that we're still struggling to get clean data, and so that is part of the foundation, but I'm sure there's other elements of it that we do need to focus on to make sure that we can use it in the customer experience.
It is. I mean, the customer experience is just an output of thousands of operational decisions every day that are made. Mode selection, carrier choice, service level trade-offs, cost versus service, speed, the accuracy of the delivery date. And none of those decisions are actually made in one system. Mm-hmm. They're made in multiple systems across multiple vendors. And a lot of times the context that is required to make the decision, it's not even trapped in a system, it's trapped in someone's head.
Right.
And so if you don't have the data stored, how are you going to make a good decision with all the siloed data and different versions of the truth? And if you don't trust the data, how can you even trust the decision that you're making?
Yeah. And where do you go from there if you don't trust it? Like, you've spent all this money and time, energy, and resources to implement a solution that you think is going to solve all the problems, which it very well might do. But if you don't trust it, you're not going to use it. You're going to go back to something like an Excel. And we're back to square one.
Yeah, and I think that people use Excel because they can touch and feel it's tangible, and they can normalize it, and they know the tabular data format, and they feel like they're comfortable with it. But the reality is, in a 2026 world with generative AI, more data is being generated than ever. And so you're going to have a data integrity and a data trust issue that is not just an issue of 2025. It's going to be compounded even more in 2026 and 2027, just based on the pure fact that we are generating so much more data and capturing so much more data. And so you're going to need a third party. You're going to need someone that can actually arbiter your data, to be the data arbiter and say, this is the truth. Because you're just going to have so many different representations. And without that arbiter of data, you're not going to trust your data, and you're not going to make the right decision.
Well, and we see this in every day with top executives in supply chain as well, as to how they are staying informed and staying on top of news and what's happening in the industry. They're ingesting it through AI because it's able to summarize their emails and give them the information that they need in a way that they need it to be able to consume it all. Because there's just so much noise and so much happening. And so I use that as a bit of an example, because if they're already using it, whether you give them their tools or not, you need to be able to control that. And you need to partner with the right people to be able to help you control that and give the tools that they're actually going to use to help control the data, to help set the data foundation and help them make the decisions that they need to be able to make.
Yeah, and by the way, that's you just nailed it. The two phases. The first phase using AI is to organize the data so that you trust it. The second phase is to use the data to make decisions.
Yeah.
And that's really the most innovative companies. They've got both of those dialed and locked, and they're seeing very high return on investment from those technological and data investments that they made.
So let's talk about that, because I want to talk about some of the examples of the brands that you work with and what they're facing as far as like real challenges in delivering the customer experience they want. And I think, what we're talking about and why they're facing such real challenges is because of manual or legacy supply chain processes. So can you walk us through some of those examples? Because I think it's really important at this point of the conversation to sort of paint that picture.
We have a major shoe retailer that's a customer, and before they were just relying on carrier updates, or if something went wrong, they would wait for a customer to complain and then react to the customer complaint, check the carrier data, go back, reissue or call the carriers to where a package is lost, what happened. And so once they got into the Loop's logistics data platform, what was really powerful is, one, we organized all the data. So we got all the shipment level visibility, real-time visibility data, where we're getting literally updates, every couple of minutes on the shipment itself. And so what one of our AI agents noticed, though, and by the way, this was during Thanksgiving, so right around Black Friday, a large amount of orders were delivered to a single FedEx drop-off location, and they were marked as delivered. So you got, some alert or some shipment that says, hey, we just want to see all the ones that are undelivered, then this wouldn't have actually been caught because it was marked as delivered. But, there was over $200,000 in goods that were just delivered to this drop-off location instead of delivered to the customer.
Oops.
And so before, just an abandoned container, which is wild. But before, what would happen is the customers wouldn't get their goods, they wouldn't get their orders, and then they would go online and they would, file a complaint or call in and say, where's my package? What's going on? And this major shoe retailer would go back and they would go through the data and they would look, oh, it's delivered. Where was it delivered? And it would take, a couple of days. And that's a couple of days of a bad experience, a really angry customer. Mm-hmm. And so with Loop and the logistics data platform, they actually were able to run an agent that detected that these, because there was an anomaly in the number of goods or orders dropped off at a single location, it flagged an anomaly detection. And then they were able to resolve that before a customer actually came inbound to complain and have FedEx notified to go pick up the abandoned container and then deliver it directly to the customers that ordered. So that was just one potential massive customer experience failure that was avoided because of them having really good data and them having some, agentic capabilities on top. Yeah,
Well,
another one, by the way, I love talking about our customers. Just the value. What makes me so proud of our work is just the value that we create, the incredible ROI. We had another one that's really major outdoor lifestyle brand, and before Loop, their customers they would love their products, and I use a lot of their products, but they didn't actually the company didn't have a good understanding of their total cost, and so with Loop, they didn't have before they didn't have the ability to go and allocate costs at a very granular product or SKU level. And the difference between a profitable order and an unprofitable order could very much be just the logistics or the shipping cost. And so now they're able to actually, using our platform, allocate costs down to the SKU level, which informs not only their pricing strategy, but what actual products they want to carry. So they even cut a few products after recognizing the margin on those products. And then in other cases, they increase the price of their products, which, by the way, still customers were totally fine to pay because of the value that those products created for them.
Well, and that created a whole new revenue stream in the fact that they were able to increase that pricing because they had the data that they needed to be able to do that. And it didn't disrupt anything. It didn't create a bad customer experience for anybody, which I love. And I really like both of those examples. And in the first one, I keep saying this because I really think that it relates to what we talk about on a regular basis here in supply chain. If things aren't moving, they are costing you money, right? If you think about that container that was sitting at FedEx, the capital that is sitting within that container, if it's taking you days to figure out where it is and why it wasn't delivered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you are losing money every single day that it sits there.
Yeah.
Right.
And the operational tax of having workflows and people that are managing all that. That's a tax, by the way, that's passed on to the consumer. In all cases, the operational inefficiencies and the lack of movement of the inventory that you're talking about, that is a tax that's always passed on to the consumer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Well, we're having a lot of fire emojis. Everybody's loving the conversation, Matt. So keep it going. Want to let everybody know that the QR code in the top right-hand corner will give you some more information about what Loop is doing. So go and grab that. And remember, if you have any questions, we want to hear from you. We want to hear where you're tuning in from. Put that in the comments. We love a good fire emoji, but we also want to hear from you so we can answer all of your questions. We'll do that throughout the show and at the end of the show as well. So make sure to put those in there. So if brands are struggling with some of these challenges, how does that transportation performance impact customer loyalty, churn, and repeat purchases? Because that really is top of mind for a lot of organizations, and more we're bringing in supply chain to be able to help with that, because I think for a long time we didn't realize how much impact supply chain had to this, and now we know that it's the driving force. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, you got the three different departments. You got the customer experience, you got transportation, you've got finance, and they've got to all work together. And you're seeing that integration tighter and tighter and tighter because exactly what you said. Supply chain is really driving the customer experience. It's driving customer loyalty, churn, repeat purchasing. And it's really based on two factors: cost and service. And so if your shipping costs are too high and your delivery timelines are too long, then your conversion at checkout is actually going to be significantly lower. And your loyal customers, they're going to go somewhere else to find that good because they need it by a certain time or they want it for a certain price. I mean, think of this, right? Even if you give them an ETA and it doesn't hit, it doesn't deliver on time, that's a really, imagine, the weatherman, you say it's gonna be sunny outside, and so I don't bring an umbrella, and all of a sudden it rains. I'm really mad. Because
Can I ask you though, and I hate to interrupt because I know you have a lot more to say, but you use the word ETA. Like, I have a logistics background, and so back when I was in logistics, ETA had a place, right? The estimated time of arrival. Now, I think with all the data and all the tools and the technology that we have, can we really say ETA, or should we really be relying on the data to be that precise?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I my team actually built the ETA algorithm at Uber, so we got a lot of thoughts on the data and the accuracy, and it's really, I'll just say it's really hard to get an accurate ETA, just because of the real world introduces so many unfair and unexpected challenges in the data. So it is really, really challenging, even in the data and technology that we have today. But think from a brand's perspective, though. If you give the wrong ETA, we just had Valentine's Day. I'm trying to get a ring delivered before the 14th, and I go and order a ring for my wife, and it says it's going to arrive on the 12th or the 13th. It arrives on the 16th. You know how much trouble I'm in? I gotta go direct my anger somewhere. I'm gonna go the brand. I'm gonna go on Reddit. I'm gonna complain. I can't believe this did that. I'm never going back. I'm never purchasing this. Forget that. So this is a huge issue, especially in these critical moments. And you gotta have accurate data to be able to deliver accurate times and accurate service. And if you lose them, like, I'm not going back. I went on Reddit. I put up a stink. I'm never going back to the brand. So they're going to blame you. They're not going to blame UPS, FedEx, the carrier, whoever it was. They're going to blame you, the brand.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody likes to get an IOU on Valentine's Day. Can you imagine? Holy moly. And you're right. I mean, I go on Reddit and sort of see what people are saying about a particular brand or a particular item. I mean, it's kind of table stakes now. You're not just going to Google for reviews. You're going to Reddit to really hear what people think about a particular brand or product. And yeah, IOUs are not nice for anybody. All right. So everybody is talking about AI. We've been talking about the importance of data. I want to dive into today's challenge with data silos, how it's linked to all of this, and ultimately to the customer experience. So let's talk about how are changing customer expectations and the challenges they cause, creating a gap between operational performance and customer experience. Like, what role do those data silos play in this gap? I mean, it's got to be huge, because at the end of the day, if we're still operating in silos as supply chain, which I have been talking about this way more than I want to be talking about it, because I feel like we should be in collaboration mode. And I'm surprised that we're still there, but we're siloed as people and departments. And then we're also siloed in data. Like, what is it going to take to bring us all together?
Yeah, when you think of it, so much of communication is about sharing context and sharing information. What do you say when you're trying to break down information walls? You say, I'm just keeping you in the loop. And what's happening, though, is with these larger enterprises, the larger and larger the enterprises get, the more fragmented and siloed the departments get, as well as the systems and the data. And so you've got these very disconnected realities where transportation has their own data, finance has their own data, customer service has their own data, and there's no connection. There's no unification, no data foundation across the service and the cost and understanding how that impacts the margin. And so everyone is misaligned. And that misalignment means that the customer is absorbing this tax. The customer is paying for how disconnected our realities are within our organization. So by having this, it is a huge advantage that companies have over delivering a superior customer experience, because you're able to meet their expectation with this unified data foundation within your enterprise.
Well, and I think about the word chaos, and messy, which have been words that have been used around the disruption that's happening in supply chain. Executive supply chain teams, everybody's a little bit overwhelmed right now. We're sitting in the uncomfortable, and that's the new norm, right? The disruptions, the chaos. But then you add in the messiness of fragmented data. You add in the chaos of fragmented data. And I almost think, like, how does anybody get anything done on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's incredible. The logistics professional's job has just become, one, incredibly important to the success, the financial performance of the organization. But two, they've got to be almost a polymath at this point. You've got to be able to understand your relationships with your carriers. You got to understand the different departments, their goals, their needs. You got to understand how to wrangle data from all these different formats. You've got to work with accounting. It's just, the demands on a logistics professional today are significantly higher than they ever were before, in part because of the complexities that we just mentioned with the data, but also just the disruptions that are happening in global supply chains there. You're challenging the global order of supply chain and deglobalizing in certain ways and areas, and we've got geopolitical issues that are happening. So it has put so much pressure. This chaos has put so much pressure on the logistics professional that they need new processes and new tools to be able to keep up.
But also there's an added pressure of moving fast when it comes to technology. And I think that can be to the detriment, which we talked about earlier, in the fact that if you're not ready and you're spending all this money on new technology and AI and you're not going to trust the data anyways.
Yeah.
We really need to get realistic about what we can and cannot do with what we've got and the foundation that we have in place. I did a LinkedIn Live a couple of months ago, and it was a VP of supply chain from Fender was like, we need to slow down to speed up. Are we ready? Are our people ready? Is our data ready? Because that's going to mean the difference between a successful launch and implementation and partnership, because you ultimately also want the client to be ready as well, because you don't want to go and implement something that isn't going to work out for the customer either. And so it's in everybody's best interest to have everything, or have the understanding of what is realistic and what is not.
And the other thing is that I really empathize, there's so much noise out there with AI solutions. I mean, AI. And most of it isn't real AI. Most of it's just slapping the chatbot on something and, a lot of fancy, shiny marketing. And it's just not going to deliver the ROI that you're expecting. And you're making this investment and you're trying to get up to speed on how to even evaluate what AI partner would choose. And so it's a really challenging task right now, just because a lot of the noise in the industry, people are trying to get up to speed and educate themselves on AI and how to actually pick the right vendor. And it's I have a lot of empathy for folks that are going through this, and they're doing it in incredibly compressed timelines because of the pace of this AI movement that's happening.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Hubert and Josh over on our LinkedIn page. They've got some really great comments in there. Highly recommend you go and check those out. If anybody has any questions, make sure to put those in the comments, because we will get to those in a little bit. Now, talking about AI, it's not a magic wand. We've just sort of talked about that. But when does AI work? When doesn't it work? Like, what does it need to work effectively when it comes to the data? And we've already kind of talked about the foundation, but I'm sure there's other layers that we need to be considering to really set us up for success.
The number one requirement is the data foundation. And the granularity and specificity of that data is important. It's not just about the volume of the data, but it's really about the quality and the structure of that data. Because if you think of turning an AI agent on in a chaotic data foundation, well, it's just going to hallucinate and make really poor decisions, which is going to deteriorate the trust in the decision that it's recommending or the workflow that it's performing. And so the number one piece is really getting that data layer right. And I can promise you that most companies, even some of the best companies in the AI space, they've avoided the data problem. We don't touch that. Our AI will work on really good database, really good data. And we can deliver all this ROI if your data is good. And so no one has really gone down to the the gutter and said, we're going to go clean all of this data and make it performant for your enterprise, because you've got to not just get this data in, you've got to make it normalized to the language of your enterprise and the language of
right.
And that requires deep, one, organizational knowledge, but two, deep domain knowledge combined with technologists that can make this happen. So that's where I'd say, like, most companies fail just in that first layer, and they have unrealistic expectations of AI because it's all breaking down on bad data.
Well, no wonder nobody trusts it.
Correct.
Because if you're moving faster than realistically is possible, then you are going to have those failure points, and you are going to lose the trust going into it, which is going to cost some real money. Can you talk about that? I think you've got some examples of when bad data costs a company like real money. I'd like to hear some of the stories around that and the real impact on business and supply chains.
Yeah, I mean, one added point here is you also, it's not just bad data, but it's also bad processes. So if you're applying AI to a broken process, then you're going to have the same challenges. They're just going to be automated challenges. And so you've got to really imagine the full scope, not just the data, but also the processes behind it. And it does require you to reimagine what your systems and what your processes will look like from the ground up if you really want to deliver, great success and great results.
Absolutely.
And just on the bad data point, I think there's a study that came out last year that bad data cost the Fortune 500s over $600 billion.
What?
So it's a huge issue. And then if you look at it just within supply chain, even within our customers, we got one of our customers, they were actually, because of bad data, they were improperly, dimming their LTL shipments. And, the warehouse that they were using, it was just, automatically defaulting to a specific dimension. And that was significantly more expensive than the actual dimensions that they were. So our AI agent actually caught this error by looking at all the data, and then their team was notified, and now they're saving close to $500,000 a year. So major, bad data does have bad consequences and bad financial outcomes. Another one, a retailer that we work with, just in the actual implementation, our AI agents identified that one of their carrier was rounding up charges. I think it was to the nearest, 5 cents or something.
Okay.
And, on one shipment, that's not a big deal, but you multiply that over that hundreds of thousands and millions, that's a huge deal. And so being able to remedy this, even just while they're bringing it into the logistics data platform, they're saving, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year instantaneously.
Well, and nobody wants that phone call. I'll tell you, I was on the other end of that phone call when a client called me and they were like, you overbilled us by 5 cents. You need to give us a credit. And it didn't happen on a regular basis. This was kind of like a one-off. And I was like, it was crazy at the time, I thought, but you're right. If it's happening over and over and over again, it could really add up. Now, I want to dive into solutions, because one of the most interesting conversations I'm having more and more is around visibility. That word is being thrown around and it means different things to different people. And I want to get a sense of how you're thinking about visibility at Loop. Like, is it more than just dots on a map, and how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, dots on a map. Everybody loves a beautiful map with all the dots, and it's really confident and really great. But the reality is, a lot of times those dots actually aren't where they really are. And traditional visibility that's just location based. Where's the truck? When will it arrive? That's great, but it's just surface level. And so we really think about visibility in terms of how decisions are made. So can you actually see the cost of a delay? Can you actually see what vendors are missing their SLAs and eroding your margin? Can you actually see how mode shifts or consolidations will affect your service and your profitability? Can you see how your inbound exposure before it even hits your inventory or revenue? I mean, that's the level of like fourth dimension visibility that these companies, the most innovative companies, are getting to, that allows them to make much better decisions. And so, yeah, you got to know the tracking data. That's fine. That's very traditional visibility. But like real X factor visibility means understanding what is happening, why it's happening, and what it means to your margin, your business.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because I think we call it total cost visibility. How does moving from average cost to SKU level allocation really change the decisions a brand can make?
Yeah, I mean, the total cost visibility is really simple. It's, we talk about the supply chain, right? It's just a series of transactions. Well, you've got to allocate all those different costs through all those different transactions and vendors into a SKU, because that's ultimately, the direct and indirect cost of that SKU. And then you get whatever you're, charging for that SKU. And that's the, revenue minus the cost of that, that's your profit for the SKU. And so if you've got inaccurate cost understanding and you don't have visibility in your costs, you might actually be upside down on a SKU for a customer. And by the way, you might still want to service that customer because they might be, a platinum or a tier 1 customer. And you're like, you know what, it's okay. We're going to eat this because we preserve the lifetime value of that customer. But that's a decision. That's a decision that was made with this data. And oftentimes companies are making that decision without the data, and they don't know what would be the optimal decision to make.
Right.
it's almost impossible until this next generation of AI came out. It's almost impossible cost effectively to be able to allocate costs at this level and to keep it and adapt and update. I mean, we use our LLMs to actually do what's called the rules authoring of the cost allocation logic. So think of, you don't have to have an engineer, an IT professional being able to code this. It's just literally you in natural language telling it exactly what it should do. And so you can update your methodology and how you're attributing these costs, all with natural language, as if you're writing an email or telling it to your analyst, this is what needs to be done. And that's only powered by large language models like Ducks that we actually built in-house. The first foundation model, 400 million parameter LLM that is specific to these types of problems. And if you can do this and you can allocate at this level and have the confidence in that data and getting the total cost visibility, then you can optimize your merchandising strategy, your packaging configuration, your sourcing, your network setup, and even your vendor selection based on this SKU level margin reality that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you too, because I think you have a digital twin, a logistics digital twin. Talk to me about that. What does that actually mean? Why is it important to not only looking backwards, but then also looking forwards? Because I think it can really help with both of those.
Yeah, the number one thing to think about with the digital twin is just a digital representation of your physical reality. Mm-hmm. And the number of if-else scenarios that you would want to run are probably infinite.
Right.
Before you can even run those manually, you've got to have a digital twin. You've got to have a digital representation of the physical world, your real world. And then you can run these if-else scenarios, but then also you can have agents that sit on top of that digital twin based on your business policies that make decisions on your behalf. And so you're now pushing decision making down all the way to the lowest level of the operations, where a lot of the real decisions that have real cost implication and service implications happen. And so that's the power, what we see. Not everyone until now, only the Fortune 100s were really able to build these types of digital twins because of the investment that's required. That's changing. That's being democratized now, the Fortune 500 and Global 2000 and more, because of the innovation and technology that's happening.
Well, and I like that example because you're empowering the front lines to really see what's possible, right? At the end of the day, when it comes to the front lines, it's all, the focus has always been about execution. But then how do we empower them to go past execution and think about what is possible? And if we think about what is possible, how do we work backwards from there to sort of make sure that what we're doing on a daily basis stacks up to that and is moving us in the right direction? So I love that. Now, the title of this particular discussion is Why Full Stack AI. So we do have to address this, and I want to do that right now. And just a friendly reminder, if you have any questions, now's the time to put it into the comments so that we can get to those in just a little bit. What does full stack AI actually mean in practice? Like, how does it go from ingesting a document to making a decision?
Yeah, it's a really important point, because a lot of companies are just taking an LLM off the shelf and they're trying to put it in their stack and expecting really great ROI. And that's the reason you look at the MIT study, 95% of our AI deployments have failed from an ROI perspective because of that. They have these expectations that you can just take a standard general purpose model and apply it. Mm-hmm. And so what full stack AI really is it's integrated all the way from the data capture, like the bones and the guts of the operations, getting that messy, unstructured data structured, clean into the logistics data platform, and then applying LLMs on top of the LLMs that were used, like Ducks, for example, used to get this messy data, standardizing address and codes and everything normalized into your supply chain language, but then also your enterprise's language, and making that happen. And if you don't have someone with great AI expertise and someone with great domain expertise, then you're just going to get a technology, you're not going to get a solution. Mm-hmm. And to make ROI really work with AI, and the reason why you're not seeing it with a lot of companies is because they do not have a solution. They just have a general purpose technology that they're trying to stuff into their stack. So you've got to have the full stack of AI, from the data ingestion to the normalization and the expertise with the domain experts, to configuration with operational and financial policies, the approvals, the controls, And then on top of that, on this data and on this policy network, deploying agents that can go, enforce this compliance with policies to make the decisions happen that you're encoding in these LLMs. So you're not seeing a lot of companies, quite frankly, very few companies taking the full stack AI approach. They're just purely taking a technology approach with an off-the-shelf LLM that's failing in deployment and failing in ROI.
That's such an interesting way to put it, right? Are you buying technology or are you buying a solution? Are you implementing technology or implementing a solution? And I'm smiling because you're talking about data ingestion and around, like it has to understand supply chain. And I think to my supply chain dictionary, it's 107 pages of acronyms that we have in the industry that I almost feel like every LLM is going to need just to ingest it to really understand the acronyms and be able to talk clearly.
I mean, the attention it's going to ask for it's going to think that you're talking about your kid going to school. Like these things hallucinate. Like that's the point. It's like language really is important to understanding our operations and understanding specifically within this next wave of artificial intelligence.
I feel badly for it with all of those acronyms and trying to get them all right. I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, Dux is trained on it. So Dux, don't feel bad for Dux. Dux is highly performant on it.
You call it Dux?
Yeah, Dux, DUX. It stands for Data Understanding and Extraction.
How did you come up with that? Just because it was an acronym? Because I am fascinated how technology companies come up with how they name some of their software.
Well, quite frankly, we've got one of the best AI teams in the Valley. Like you name it, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Uber. Like that's the level of our AI team, and they're very creative. And so they actually came up with Dux. Not in the I first heard of like Dux. What are we talking about? Like animal? But no, for very precisely doing data understanding and extraction. And so it wasn't like a marketing word. It was very much a technical word that our AI team generated that ended up sticking.
I love that. Now, I want to move into predictive AI because this is another one that everybody's sort of talking about, right? With all the disruptions, we want to be able to forecast properly. We want to be able to predict things. What does a predictive supply chain actually look like? Is it about predicting delays? Is it about predicting costs? Is it about predicting inventory? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, the prediction mainly that we see is just better forecasting. Where they're trying to predict their volumes, which are predicting their cost. And that's allowing them to better price their products. Because if they can better forecast, they can better price, then they can better sell, they can better budget and hit goal. And that, by the way, that's the whole life cycle of the business operating system. So better data allows for better forecasting, and better forecasting allows for better decisions.
And then I want to bring finance into this because I really feel that finance and supply chain should be working a lot closer together. We always talk about supply chain and procurement, which I think is important too, but supply chain and finance, and we're going to get to, how we bridge the gap. But first, I want to focus on the finance team and talk directly to them. Because if they trust their data 100%, what should they be automating first? Is it audit? Is it cost allocation? What is the quick win here?
Well, look, I mean, the supply chain team, they think in shipments and modes and carriers and service levels and getting things from point A to point B. Finance thinks in terms of accruals, forecasting, general ledger codes, margin, cash flow. And so for them, it's really about automating the full accounting lifecycle. I mean, and it starts with audit, and then it's the general ledger coding, which allows them to get very granular and accurate and better, delivering better accruals. And so by having that work knocked out, and to be able to be a true strategic partner to the supply chain team, not just a processor, but truly be a strategic analyst to supply chain team, that's how companies are then getting the X factor and making decisions that are powering better operations and better customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to give a shout out to Rudy over on my personal LinkedIn. We got a fire emoji. And then on the Let's Talk Supply Chain Instagram, I see I want to say, I don't know how to say your handle. Handles on Instagram are very difficult, and I don't know what your name is. But I want to give you a shout out for joining us today. We see your question, and we're going to get to that in just a little bit. And if we don't, we're going to tag the Loop team to be able to answer that question for you. So let's talk about bridging the gap between finance and supply chain. Who actually should own the single source of truth, and how do we get them to work together?
It's truly shared in what we call, a brain, an organization's brain. You got to have it. You truly have to have it shared to work. And I think, full stack AI is what really makes this happen, because logistics data and finance data is embedded into every department, really. And if you can create this shared visibility into performance and profitability, then you're going to have better decisions made all the way at the lowest level of the operations. If an operator is sitting there saying, I understand the implications of shipping this, expedited versus shipping this today, or ground. Those are the decisions that are made. That the on the floor operator might not even understand the finance implications of that.
Yeah.
And so, getting this shared sense of, visibility into the cost and the operations is how this happens, and truly democratizing access to this. Before, most companies, it's gated. It's gated because they don't have enough analysts to be able to share all of this information with the different business units and their different operations. Now, AI is like, you've got infinite analysts, and the AI is, able to do the same things that the analysts are able to do. It's just able to do it as if you had unlimited analysts. And so
Right.
That's the real, bridge between finance and supply chain, is really how can you empower your supply chain operators with financial based decisions that are driving true better service, better pricing, better costing outcomes for the business.
Yeah. I have a question from Amy in the audience that goes directly to this. So I want to ask that. My finance team and my logistics team never agree on the numbers. We are always fighting over who is right. How does Loop actually get us all on the same page?
Well, by the way, we see this all the time, where one department has a different representation of the other. And it could be, by the way, mostly because they're looking at different data. And so if you've got the logistics data platform where it's reconciled, we'll have, for example, you've got a bill lading that's got something, you've got an invoice that's got something, you've got an email that's got something, you've got a contract that's got something, you've got a order management system that says something. We will actually arbiter the truth of what this actually is. Mm-hmm. And so having a third party arbiter the truth of the data allows both teams to agree on this is true.
Kind of like mediation in real time.
Like the third party really does help, but then obviously having someone with AI capabilities to reconcile this data across multiple artifacts and multiple systems is really how the trust happens within the organization.
Awesome. I have another question from John. We already have a TMS, or transportation management system, and an ERP. Does this platform replace those, or does it sit on top of them? I really can't handle another rip and replace software project right now. I mean, can anybody?
Yeah. The three-letter acronyms we sit on top of. Think of us as this AI brain for the operations. And then we sit on top and we orchestrate across these systems. We think of those systems as very powerful execution and database systems, but they don't have the context to make the right decisions. They don't have the agentic capabilities to go and perform the work that an analyst or a human operator would perform. And so we view them as very valuable data providers to our context and our AI brain that sits within the operations. And we definitely don't recommend replacing them, because those certainly serve a purpose. But if you really want to get to the next level of your AI deployment, you're going to have an orchestration system that's built on much better context and much better data to be able to improve your decisioning.
Yeah. Okay. I've got one more question from the audience, and then I've got a final couple of questions for you. So budgets are really tight this year. You mentioned saving money by catching billing errors. Is that savings usually enough to pay for the platform? How do I sell this to my CFO? That is a great question.
It's so spot on, because the number two questions that I get are, what ROI are you going to generate, and how quickly can you generate it?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just the cost savings, but it's the time of the cost savings that are really important. And we think of all of this as excess spend. And there are multiple categories of excess spend. It could be your billing overpayment. Like no one wants to be inaccurately paying bills that are costing them money. And so that's certainly a category of excess spend. But it also goes down to an under-optimized contract. Like if you could get a better contract, shouldn't we be getting a better contract that gives you better service and it's cheaper?
Right.
All the way to better performance. Like you shouldn't be getting hit with these accessorial charges if you had really tight operations or your customers are impacting that because of their poor operations. So we view it holistically as excess spend, and our platform in our control tower actually quantifies every single dollar saved through excess spend detection. And we give you these recommendations and these choices so that you can avoid that spend currently in the real-time decision, but then also implement it for policies and future decisions. So you're not overpaying an invoice or under optimized contracts or underperforming operations. But it is like the only thing I would say is software. If you're a software provider in the AI space, you better deliver an ROI-based outcome because that's the only way it's getting improved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I need that for me right now. I mean, sometimes we're eyeballing some of these invoices to be like, oh, okay, I think this is right. You're passing it through and you're paying for it. So I think we need that in our daily lives, not just supply chain. So I have one more question for you. What do you think people should take away from this conversation? What should they walk away putting into action first to set themselves up for success in 2026?
The number one thing I would say is just that the customer experience, it's not just a front end problem, it's a logistics data problem. And you've got to really focus on your data because of your shipment and your contract and your cost and your performance data. All this data is just fragmented across your organization. Then you're going to certainly deliver a very inconsistent service. You're going to probably deliver poor margins, and you're not really going to be leveraging technology like AI that your competitors are leveraging. And so your customers, if you're not doing that, your customers are going to take it to your competitors, which is ultimately going to fire you because they took their business elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And so I think the number one thing to set into motion first is really start with the data layer. You need a logistics data platform that integrates and hydrates all this data in your enterprise language, and specifically with the supply chain ontology or data model.
Yeah.
I mean, the next thing is once you have that data foundation built, it's asking the hard questions of the data through agents, but also building your business policies on top of that. And then once you have that built, you're able to not just make surface level decisions with AI or dashboards, but you're truly able to orchestrate a decisioning platform that you trust, that delivers a superior experience, and delivers higher margins so that you're looking like a hero within your organization.
Well, and bringing everybody together too, right? We've been talking about bridging the gaps between finance and supply chain. How do we get to this place of collaboration? This is it.
It really is. And I think the other thing is with this capability, pushing the decision-making down, empowering the operators with the data to make these decisions.
Yes, we need to empower those. Like I said earlier, empowering the frontline workers to see what is possible, and their role in that keeps everybody motivated and passionate about coming to work every single day. And that's what we need right now, because we want to be able to retain those frontline workers to be able to do the jobs that need to be done. So in such a competitive landscape, customer experience is absolutely critical to setting your business apart. But with such high expectations, it's just not an easy task. And I think you can get that from our conversation today. And it's been incredibly valuable to hear exactly how AI and real-time transportation data can really unlock the ability to shape better customer experiences, but also enhance loyalty and really boost business performance and supply chains. So if you're looking for a partner to help you unlock profit trapped in supply chain data, check them out. Go to loop.com or click the QR code at the top right-hand corner of your screen and it will take you there. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who showed up for this conversation today, who put a comment in, told us where they were tuning in from, and also the fire emojis. And then obviously a big thank you to the team at Loop, and of course to you, Matt, for joining me today and sharing such incredible insights.
This is really fun. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We'll see everybody again soon. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.